Storytime about how I found out that my neighbor was sneaking into my house and stealing my food. So a little background information, I was 19 and I had just gotten out of high school. And as soon as I graduated high school, my plan was to get out of my parents' house. Because it was such a toxic environment, I couldn't do it anymore. But me being 19 years old and only having a little bit of money saved up, it was slim pickings. But finally, I found this one place that was super cheap and it was a duplex, meaning that it was one house but divided into two. And as you could imagine, it's in a rundown neighborhood, super dangerous, and I just happened to live on the worst street. So I had met my neighbors and they seemed a little bit off. You could definitely tell that they were on something, but to each their own. So I go grocery shopping and fast forward a few weeks, I realized that my food is going missing. And at first it was just little things. Like for example, my cereal. I would go grocery shopping on Monday. And by Wednesday, I had only eaten 2 bowls of cereal, but somehow there were only crumbs left in the bag. So at first I'm thinking that I have rats in my house, but I didn't see any holes in the boxes. Like for part 2.
Storytime about how my father is obsessed with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm sending me on Instagram. And trigger warning, my mom and dad had me when they were very, very young. My mom was 14 years old when she got pregnant with me. From what my mom told me, my parents were pretty much together throughout the whole pregnancy. Even though they were both in high school, they wanted to move in together and try to raise me like a regular family. But my maternal grandmother had a very big issue with this. She wanted my mom to continue going to high school and possibly even give me up for adoption. But my mom was not having it, so she decided to move out with my dad. Once I was born, unfortunately, my parents just couldn't take care of me. My dad was too busy playing his football and trying to get a scholarship. And my mom just didn't really know how to take care of a child. I mean, she was a child herself. This is when my grandmother stepped in and decided to take me in, which I thank God for every single day of my life. My grandmother raised me as her own daughter, and she has been the most amazing woman in my entire life. My parents split up, and through most of my childhood, I lived with my mom and my grandmother. I didn't see my dad for about 10 years. By the time I saw him again, I was 15 years old. Part 2 is a story time about how my father is obsessed with me. Disclaimer, is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. And trigger warning. I finally saw my father again when I was 15 years old. From the moment he saw me, he wanted to hug me and kiss me all the time. At first, I thought it was normal because he's my father and he hadn't seen me in over 10 years. After a few weeks of him coming to visit me, I started feeling really strange. This was also around the time where I was getting noticed by boys in school. And you know that feeling you get when you know a guy likes you? Well, that's the feeling I started getting from my own father. Every time he touched me, it was like too touchy. And every kiss was just strange. One of the things that really started to bother me was that he liked going to the beach, and he wanted to make it a thing. He would always say, let's go to the beach on the weekend, but I didn't feel comfortable with him. First off, he never invited my mom to come or my grandma, so it was always just me and him. He even took me shopping for bikinis, and this is when my stomach dropped. At the bikini shop, he asked for small bikinis, like the type that show a lot of skin. Told him I wasn't comfortable with that. I wanted a bathing suit. He said no and bought me a thong bikini. He stared at me all day at the beach. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how my father is obsessed with me, part 3. After he bought me the thong bikini and forced me to wear it at the beach, I noticed he was staring at me. I wrapped myself in a towel and told him I wanted to leave. After that, I told my mom and my grandma how I felt about my dad. They thought that I was exaggerating, but I knew that I wasn't. My mom asked him to never ever do anything like that again, and he said he wouldn't. After that, he would always do certain things, like stare at me too much, or always want to hug me and kiss me. And for my own comfort and safety, I put a lot of space between him and I. When I was 18, I finally got my first boyfriend. He became enraged when my mom told him. He told my mom that I was acting like a slut. That's when I cut him out completely from my life. A year later, I got on Instagram, and that's when he started following me there. He started leaving strange comments on all my pictures, and eventually he started offering me money to spend more time with him. I told him I wasn't comfortable with him. That's when he told me that all he wanted to do was watch me take a bath, and that he would pay me thousands if I let him. My grandmother and my mom have completely cut him out of our lives. On the day of my wedding, we hired security to keep him away. And of course, he managed to show up, but security kicked him out. I'm thinking I should get a restraining order. Luckily, my mental health hasn't suffered too much from this. He's obviously an unwell person, but I actually feel really bad for him. And I feel like getting a restraining order is just going to make things worse. What the heck should I do? Bye.
Part 3 about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with this girl best friend. So like I said, she snaps me at 1:30 in the morning, a picture of her laying on his chest, and it's captioned, "Hey girly, I hope you don't mind, but I have to spend the night at his house. He lost track of time working on our project, and it's way too late for him to take me home." So at this point, I'm furious, and I don't snap her back. So the next morning, I call my boyfriend, and I asked him, "Hey, is Addie still there?" So he says yeah, and then I ask him to put me on speakerphone. So when he does, I say hi to Addie. She goes, "OMG, hey girl, how are you?" And that's when I pretty much go off on this bitch. I tell him that while he was asleep, she was sending me pictures of her laying on top of him off of his Snapchat. and that she was sending those type of pictures to multiple people on his Snapchat, because my best friend had texted me that morning saying that she thought that we broke up because Addie was sending her pictures of her laying on top of him. So I tell him, pick me or her. And she starts crying. After a minute of silence, he hangs up the phone and then blocks me. Good luck to the next girl. Storytime, I had to go to jail because of my toxic ex-boyfriend. So a little background information. Him and I started dating right after high school. And this relationship was so fucking toxic. We would literally fight over the dumbest shit. So fast forward 4 years later, the one night he had his friends over and he wanted me to cook steak. I decided to cook chicken instead. And this is what triggered the entire fucking fight. He was saying things like, you never listen to what I say, you can't turn a hoe into a housewife type of shit. So he pretty much blew up and was like trying to kick me out of our house. He went to our master bedroom, started breaking all my shit, throwing it down the stairs, and his friends left me there with his crazy ass. So I tried to get him to stop, but he wouldn't, of course. So then he ended up calling his fucking sister, who is 10 years older than me, trying to get her to come to my house and kick my ass. I never really got in a fight like this, so I decided to call 911. She heard him in the background going crazy like for part 2. Part 2 of why I had to go to jail because of my toxic ex-boyfriend. So like I said, the dispatcher on the phone could hear him in the background going absolutely fucking psycho. So she told me to hide. I ran upstairs into the master bedroom and locked the door until they came. So they interviewed us separately, and he has the nerve to start fucking crying, saying that I was beating his ass, and he even fucking scratched himself. So even though I called 911, they said in a domestic dispute they had to take somebody to jail. And since he had visible marks on him, they took me to jail. So the police officer told me to take off all my clothes and to only wear one layer and to also take out my shoelaces before he brought me in. So they booked me in jail, put me in a freezing cold fucking cell with 25 other actual bad bitches for 7 hours. And this is the best part. My ex kept trying to call and get me out the whole time I was in there, saying that he lied and everything. They set a court date for me, but when I showed up, they literally just dropped all the charges. Now I just tell everybody that I've been to jail and I'm not scared to go back.
Story time about how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 months. He's a personal trainer, so he's really into fitness. When we started dating, I wasn't super fit, but I definitely was toned. Unfortunately, I got the Rona, so I got fired from my job because I couldn't work for 2 weeks. I was super sick and I really became depressed. I basically sat on my couch for those 2 weeks and ate a lot. Before I knew it, I had gained 7 pounds. When I finished my quarantine, I finally was able to see my boyfriend. And when he first came into my house to see me, he looked shocked. He looked me up and down and said, "Did you gain weight?" I said, "Yeah, I probably gained like 7 or 10 pounds. And then he asked me how I could let myself go like that. I told him I was totally by myself, cooped up in my apartment, and I had nothing else to do but eat. And that's when he said, and I quote, "Well, we need to get you back into the gym to get you in shape again, because I don't want a fat girlfriend." I laughed because I thought for sure he's joking, but then he said, "Stop laughing, it's not a joke." My stomach sank and I felt like I was gonna poop my pants. I started to cry and he told me that I shouldn't be a baby, that he's allowed to be honest with me about stuff like this because it has to do with him being attracted to me. So in other words, he wasn't attracted to me anymore. That's when he went into my room, picked out a pair of leggings and a sweatshirt, told me to get dressed, and took me straight to the gym. He made me exercise for an hour and a half. Instead of getting upset about it, I decided to just take it in stride and go with it. I thought maybe I can get in the best shape of my life now that I have a trainer boyfriend. As we were working out, he kept commenting on my thighs. He said that they needed to have a gap and that instead of being muscular, I was super soft. Again, I started to cry. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. After he told me that I was soft at the gym, I started to cry again. I told him that I needed to be more sensitive towards my feelings and that I didn't want to be in a relationship if he was going to be like this toward me. That's when he said that he didn't want to be in a relationship with me because I had gained weight and that's not what he had signed up for. That's when he told me I needed to look around and see all the fit women in the gym and that he could have any of those girls. I was in utter shock. I just couldn't believe that he was talking to me like that and I had never seen that side of him before. The more I cried, the angrier he got, but finally he said, "Okay, I'm sorry. Let's just do 20 minutes on the Stairmaster." That's when I told him I didn't want to work out anymore. Mind you, he had already had me at the gym for an hour and a half. That's when he said, "Fine, I'll take you home, but I'm coming back to the gym." The whole way home, he stayed quiet and gave me the cold shoulder while I cried. He pulled up to my house and I got out of the car and he literally sped away as fast as he could. He proceeded to give me the cold shoulder for the next 2 days. I finally broke and texted him telling him we needed to speak. That's when he said we could talk at the gym. I agreed and he went to pick me up. But the first thing he wanted to do at the gym was put me on a scale and weigh me. I told him absolutely not. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. He was trying to force me to get on the scale so that he could weigh me because he wanted to see how much weight I could lose lose in 1 week. I kept saying no, but then he said fine. Then he handed me a piece of paper and said, here's the diet I want you to follow for the next 4 weeks. I grabbed the piece of paper and just put it in my purse. Then he has the audacity to get mad at me for not even looking at the diet. He said that I was disrespectful and that I didn't even look at the diet and that it took him hours to write all of that out. And then he said the thing that crushed my heart. He would be embarrassed to take me around his friends and family with the way that I looked. As soon as he said that, I ran out of the gym and walked home. Of course, he followed me and told me to get in the car, but I refused. I finally got to my house and he called me. I told him I needed some time away from him and that his behavior was extremely toxic. And that if I didn't have a problem with my weight, neither should he. That's when he said that he was accustomed to only being with girls that were super fit and even had abs. He told me that at first he wasn't convinced if he should date me, but I had a really pretty face. And that he was willing to overlook the fact that I wasn't super fit. He's a total narcissist, but I'm still in love with him. I tried to break up with him, but he said no. And he's still insisting that we just go to the gym together at least. I don't even know how to respond to him. What should I
Story time about why my best friend cut me off. So a little background information, I was 24 and I had a full-time job as a nurse, and I had been best friends with this girl since we were in 7th grade. As soon as she turned 21, she got married, had a kid, and just like any young tragic love story, her boyfriend, who was way older than her, left her for some girl who just turned 18. So I ended up letting her move in with me. She had too much pride to go back to her mom's house. I ended up kicking her out of my house though, because she would have random guys over 24/7, and she would smoke you know what in my house. So I had the cops called on me 24/7 because my neighbors could smell it. So fast forward to now, she's living with her mom. Her and I got over that fight, and she decided that she wanted to go to college. I was so proud of her, but she asked me if I could watch her kid when she had to go into school because she was doing mostly online. So of course I said yes, I wanted her to succeed. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why my best friend cut me off. So like I said, she finally decided to go to college. Me being super happy for her, I would watch her kid whenever she would have to go into school. Well, the one night I'm making dinner and her kid's in the living room, I'm in the kitchen, and I go into the living room to tell him that dinner is ready. And I see my dog backed up into a corner and him with a fire poker, literally poking my dog. I wouldn't even call it poking, he was pretty much trying to stab my dog. My dog has its ears back, it's shaking with anxiety. So I go over and I rip it out of his hands and I smack his fingers. And I tell him, we do not do that to the dog. Like, what is wrong with you? So my friend comes, picks him up. A few days later, she comes to drop him off again. And she says, hey, can I talk to you? I already knew what it was about, so I was expecting this. She was like, Gavin told me that you hit him last time he was here. And I was like, yeah, he pretty much was stabbing my dog. And then she's like, oh, well, you know, he doesn't mean any harm. He plays with the dogs like that at home. Like, okay, sis, this
story time about how my bully set me up to have me essayed and tried to starve me. And this is my own story time. I was in school, I was a total pushover. You guys, I never defended myself. Instead, my brothers and sisters would defend me all the time. Which is why I say my brothers and sisters are my best friends now. Anytime boys would bother me, my twin brother would be right there to defend me. And anytime a girl bothered me, my sister would literally fight for me. So I had this bully in school. I'm gonna call her B. B was the queen bee. All the boys and all the girls would do whatever she wanted. She was funny, she was charming, and she made everyone laugh. So I understand why she was popular in our class. But how can everybody do what one girl said? I mean, the power she wielded over these boys. B was new to our school, and I could tell that she did not like me right away. In fact, I could hear her talking bad about me sometimes in class, and then when I looked at her, she would pretend like she was talking about somebody else. But nonetheless, she became friends with some of the girls that I was kind of friends with. By the way, I got bullied by almost everyone in my year, especially the girls. So one day, B invites me and the rest of the girls over to her house. But little did I know that she had invited a boy to essay me. Part 2 is up. But that's when I realized she invited a boy to essay me. After school, we all get dropped off at our house, and nobody was home. Like, her mom wasn't even there, nobody was there. Although her little sister was there. Her little sister was only a year younger than us, but she wasn't that much younger. Her sister was a saint. She was super nice and kind. Right away when we got to her house, she tried to separate me from the group. First, I didn't know why she was doing that until I saw a boy. Let's call him William. Funny thing is that these people actually tried to follow me on Instagram, but I blocked them. Anyway, William literally came out of the shadows. Like, he was already in the house. Creepy. Anyway, everyone in class knew that William had a crush on me, which is why I used to stay away from him. So as soon as I saw him, my stomach dropped. That's when B tells me to go to the garage, and I needed to go get something for her. I walk with her to the garage, and William walks in too. Out of nowhere, she runs away and locks the door, leaving me and William alone. Instantly, I was afraid. Tried to talk to me, but then tried to kiss me right away. I kept turning my face and didn't want to. He tried to grab my you-know-what. And that's when he tried grabbing my you-know-what. Kept pushing his hand away while he was trying to stick his tongue down my throat. The whole thing was incredibly disgusting. Mind you, I'm 13 at the time. And I push him away really hard and start banging on the door. And it opens the door, and everyone that was invited was listening through the door. And they all started cackling like it was hilarious what had just happened to me. Me, on the other hand, I was crying. I called my mom and asked her to pick me up. But my mom couldn't come right away. It would be like another hour before she could. William left and I felt much better. B then gave me a half-ass apology, which I look back and I'm like, at least she did, but still not cool. That's when she starts offering everyone food except for me. She warmed up tortillas and scrambled eggs and made everyone a plate, except for me. She looked at me and said, oh, there isn't enough for everybody. That's when her little sister comes up to her and says, stop being so mean, give her food. Her sister took me to the kitchen, warmed me up a tortilla and some of the leftover eggs. I sat down there with her sister and we both ate together. After that, her sister and I became friends. But B was so mad that her sister gave me food. They even got into a huge fight in front of us. Moral of the story, if your bully ever invites you over, just don't go. I have so many more personal stories. Should I do more? I found out my best friend set me up to get assaulted and robbed. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm sending me on Instagram. Growing up, I got bullied a lot and I never had a best friend. After graduating from college, I landed a really good job. I actually started working as a forest ranger and this was my dream job. I love being outside in nature. Like I said, I don't have a lot of friends. I even had to move to a smaller town to be at this job. When I got to this small town, immediately one girl started trying to befriend me. Let's call her Katie. Katie was extremely nice to me. Like almost too nice at the beginning. She was always inviting me to go out and even introduced me to all her friends. I ended up really liking her friend group, which was so nice. A month into living there, weird things started happening. One day I woke up to a knife in my tire. Then a few days later, 2 of my packages were stolen. I decided to install a Ring camera and I told nobody. For the next 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then one night, my Ring camera notifies me that someone is outside my door. The person was wearing a black hoodie, so I couldn't see their face, but I could tell that they were a woman. Part 2 is up. I found out my best friend set me up to get assaulted and robbed. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I said I'm on Instagram. That's when I see a black figure outside my door. Couldn't see exactly who they were, but I could tell it was a woman. I obviously didn't confront them because I didn't know if they had weapons. Instead, I turned on my porch light and they ran away. The next morning, I realized that they were scoping, trying to figure out how they could get in my house. I went to the police and they told me that it was probably just teenagers playing a joke on me. I decided to believe them because I couldn't imagine somebody wanting to rob me. But more weird things started happening. I have my packages stolen at least once a week, so I decided to get a P.O. box instead. Mind you, while all of this is happening, I'm still hanging out with Katie and her friends. She was always calling me her bestie, and we would do everything together. She would even come over to my house and sleep over. I truly thought that she was a good person. One night I go out with Katie and her friends. Katie decided to get belligerently drunk. This is when she started saying things like, we know you have money. You come from money, don't you? I decided to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, they were all gone. Part 3 is up. I found out my best friend set me up to get assaulted and robbed. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I said I'm on Instagram. When I come back from the bathroom, I realized they ditched me. By the way, they had given me a ride to the bar. Because there's no Uber at that time in my small town, I ended up having to hitch a ride with some random man. The next day, Katie comes over super apologetic. She even asked me if she could sleep over, so I said yes. The entire time she was at my house, she kept trying to smoke cigarettes outside, and she kept leaving the door unlocked. I finally go to bed, I check that the door is locked, and it was. Then at 2 a.m., I wake up to my Ring alarm notifying me that there's people outside. When I look, there are 4 men standing at my door, and they're yelling at me to open the door. They even said, be ready because we're horny. I was petrified. I instantly called the police and told them that they needed to leave, which they did. And I go looking for Katie and she's nowhere to be found. When the cops came, they ended up telling me that Katie had done this to other women, and that the group of men were her cousins. That's when I realized that she was the one stealing all my stuff. They were arrested, but they couldn't keep him there. How am I going to be in the same town as her? I don't think I should have to move. What should I do?
Storytime about why I hate my brother's girlfriend. So a little background information, I was 14 years old and had just started my freshman year of high school, and my brother and his girlfriend were both seniors. And we're gonna call his girlfriend Riley. Now, Riley and my brother started dating in the middle of the summer, and you would think since they just started dating and basically just met each other that I wouldn't know her that well. But literally 2 days after they started dating, she started spending every single day at my house. I'm being serious, like she had a whole duffel bag that had basically her closet in it. But that wasn't the problem. So in the summertime, my parents would plan a lot of family activities, and since they were called family activities, his girlfriend wasn't allowed to go. I mean, I think she would have been allowed to go, but she was also really disrespectful to my mom. So after one of our family days, my parents asked my brother if Riley would be joining us for dinner, and he just ignored them and went up to his room. And my room's right next to his, so I could hear everything. And Riley called him, like, for part 2. Part 2 about why I hate my brother's girlfriend. So like I said, my room was right next to my brother, so I could literally hear everything. And I guess Riley called him, and she was complaining about me. She was like, she's the reason why your mom doesn't like me. I feel like she's jealous of me. She doesn't want us to be together. Which was really weird because I didn't give a fuck about what my brother did. So fast forward, school finally starts. And Riley lived about 20 minutes away from us. So my brother told her that he couldn't go and pick her up for school every day. But obviously I would ride to school with him because we lived together. Anyways, eventually she had a problem with that too. So my brother and I had to start leaving 30 minutes early to get to school so we could pick her up. So the first time that we pick her up, we pull up to her house. and obviously I'm in the front seat, and she's just standing there. So my brother rolls down the window and he's like, get in the fucking car, we're gonna be late. And then she literally has the audacity to start arguing with my brother in front of me about why she should get the front seat instead of me. Like for part 3. Part 3 about why I hated my brother's girlfriend. So like I said, once she got in, she started screaming about how she should get the front seat instead of me. So I turn around and I'm like, last time I checked, you've only been here for 2 months. Stay in your fucking lane. And then she starts crying because she's like, oh my god, your sister's so mean to me. Like, I just feel like I should have more respect as his girlfriend. So fast forward to the weekend, my mom said that she needs to have a talk with me. And she's like, honey, I know you may not like your brother's girlfriend, but you have to stop being mean to her. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've only had one conversation with her in the last week, and that was to tell her to stay in her fucking lane. And then I told her about everything going on, so she calls my brother down to ask him if it's true, and my brother was pretty pissed off at me, but he wouldn't lie. So my mom said that she was not allowed over the house anymore, and that he wasn't allowed to go pick her up from school until I got my license. So that just caused more problems between her and my brother, so he broke up with her. And then she started spreading rumors that she broke up with him because there was something weird going on between him and I.